network interview with the producers of new film, The Lady of Heaven. My name is Stuart Kemp, and I'm delighted to be speaking to Malik Shliebak and Hussein Ashmir, the producers of historical drama, The Lady of Heaven. The film tells the story of Arabian holy legend Lady Fatima and details her message of peace and non-violence through two separate timelines hundreds of years apart, beginning in modern-day Iraq. Welcome, Malik. Welcome, Hussein. Thank you for joining us. Now, first of all, I'd like to ask, why did you decide to bring the story of Lady Fatima to the big screen?
Thank you, Stuart. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so The Lady of Heaven, I mean, to answer that question, I'd need a really lengthy amount of time. The lady herself is such a important character to us. She's very well known across the Middle East, and she has such a deep, rich history. A lady that's impacted my life personally in ways that I can't even describe. My life revolves around the lady, and I think Hussein Ashmir would probably say the same thing. And the team, all of us, we just have this this passion, and we've had this passion prior to this project as well, in terms of sharing the story of the lady with the world. We've done so in other types of media, and film was the obvious next step. So we came together and we pulled off this project, and hopefully more to come in terms of spreading the message of the lady.
It mixes two storylines set centuries apart. It's a young Iraqi child's journey amidst a battle-scarred country to learn the power of patience, and the historical tale of Lady Fatima and the person that's been very influential in your life. Can you describe your creative decision-making process in making the film that way, in dividing it into two parts?
Sure. I mean, the story of the lady is so complex, and there's so much to tell. There's so much to go through. So when it comes to a film, of course, you're very restricted. The lady, she has a message to deliver, and our job in terms of doing justice to her life and her story was to try to obviously translate that into a film that people can make sense of. You know, this is 1,400 years ago. It's a different world, a different culture, a different time, and again, her life is just so complex and so rich. So these two parallel stories with the present and the history, it was formed obviously by the writer Sheikh Al-Habib as a means to connect the two worlds, to bridge the two worlds together, in order for people today to relate to the lady's story. And without going into the plot too much, but of course, the present time, the history time, there's a lot of things that correlate, sort of mirror over. And one of the things we're trying to do this film, since the woman, the lady herself, is a figure that we hope people can take inspiration from. We're presenting things in a way where people can see that things she went through and the challenges she faced are very applicable to today's time. And she teaches us how to deal with these things, especially when it comes to things regarding oppression, tyrannical governments, theocracy, any of the challenges we face in modern day terrorism, for example. And we always say her message is a message of peace and a message of patience in times of hardship. So this present time does that job in connecting the two worlds together, and you see that through Laith, who discovers the lady himself throughout the film, and you see his development as a young child in war-torn Iraq, and hopefully people in today's time can take a lesson from that and see the beauty in her life.
In terms of patience, it's a very big theme in the film because of the lady. And speaking of patience, when it comes to mounting a film and getting a film made, you certainly need a lot of patience. Can you describe how long it took to get the film made, and perhaps talk around the construct of the director involved in the film?
Saying, how long have we been working on this production? I mean, it's as long as I can remember.
I think it probably inception was around 2015, 2016 is when pen on paper first went. However, due to the complicities around the production itself, it took many years to ensure that it all comes together and comes together in a way that as Muslims we ensure that it portrays the lady, the holy characters, and everyone else in a way, or if one would like, a code, to ensure that nobody will find it offensive in any way, if you like. So a lot of effort went into that. You know, with the construction of the film, when it comes to CGI, was always very new. The technology, some of the technology we used had never been used before. So you know, there were some teething problems. You know, patience one had to exercise vehemently at many different points, but we were determined to see this through, and we were.
Yeah, it was definitely a lengthy. I mean, if Hussein's numbers are correct, because it's really been as long as I can remember, probably about 5 years. But on the Eli King Eli King director question, so Eli King's actually a stage name, which we've published and announced in terms of the name Eli King and what it represents, because this film, you know, is a very different type of film. It's a very unique film from a few angles. That perhaps no other film shares in totality. Maybe some aspects, you know, one aspect being a religious film tied to the Muslim faith. So there's a huge number of sensitivities we have to take into account in order to be sensitive towards Muslim norms and things like that. So that's a huge complexity. And then there's a complexity of historical accuracy. The writer Sheikh Al-Habib has set this forth from day one, that this film needs to be, from the historical aspect, entirely accurate. As much as historical documents allow us to understand, we need to implement it in that way. We had basically zero wiggle room in terms of the historical accuracy of the film. And again, one of the things we do say is this is one of the or the most historically accurate film production ever made, because other historical films, they usually, they mold the story to fit a cinematic production quite a bit, sometimes a lot more than perhaps they should. For us, we had no wiggle room, like literally no wiggle room. It's very strict. So because of some of these complications, we took a new approach, which was to put into place a collaborative effort, which is the title Eli King. And this Eli King represents the collaboration between the writer Sheikh Al-Habib, between the team members, executive producers in Enlightened Kingdom, and then Matthew Cooper's the producer, and John Stevenson, the creative consultant. And then of course all other parties, but these are the core members that form this collaborative effort.
So going back to that, you, in accordance with the Muslim faith, you've obviously had to take and wanted to take great pains in not showing a holy person represented by a human. So no actor could actually play the role of the lady, or indeed the prophet. Can you give me a bit more about how difficult that was for the production, and also how pleasing it was to have got it so right?
Yeah, the holy characters, and yeah, extremely sensitive area of the film. And beginning this production, we kind of done our background research in terms of what has been done when it comes to holy personalities from the Muslim tradition. And you tend to see an example in The Message, the film The Message, featuring or starring Anthony Quinn. For the Prophet, for example, they put no one there. It's quite strange. You'll see the camel, and someone's supposedly standing next to the camel or sitting on the camel, but no one's there, and you just you imagine they're signaling someone to be there, but there's no one actually there. You have other productions, maybe lower quality productions, where they have someone, but they only show them from the back, or they show a face and it's just extremely, bright light coming out the face. All these kind of were not suitable for a cinematic production, especially not in 2021. So we had to figure out a new approach, which was this CGI approach, which has never been done before. And yeah, so the characters are represented with this CGI, and we had to spend meticulous amounts of time with the VFX house to craft these holy characters, again, very closely, well, not very closely, but as exact as the historical records tell us of how these characters looked. So we pulled out, there was a whole year's of research, a whole year of research prior to the production starting, with all the historical research. And the historical documents actually tell you, for example, to the point of how many gray hair the Prophet has in his beard. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of meticulous detail, in the historical records about how they look. So we had to kind of, work with the VFX house to get that spot on, and and that being in line with the restrictions of the Muslim faith. And yeah, so a lot of back and forth, because one of the hard things about that, the most challenging things, is trying to express or communicate with the VFX team about what's required. So there's whole bunch of steps just trying to get the message across in the first place, and there's a whole back and forth, and there's a whole huge tug of war. You have the creative vision of the artist. It was just really difficult, but in the end the results were outstanding, and I think they do justice to the holy characters.
You mentioned Oscar winner John Stevenson earlier. Can you what did he bring to the storytelling and the project? Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yes, John is, just on the fact alone, I'm sure you're aware, he was the CEO of Jim Henson's Creature House.
Right. Yeah.
And that just that tells you about his creative levels. He's an immensely creative person. I admired him greatly, and working with him was a great joy. He's such a positive and driven person. You always have this mindset, because he is from a directing background as well, in terms of directing films. So you usually imagine directors or people of that position, very, maybe driven in a maybe a bit of a harsh way, trying to get the ball rolling in a direction they want. But his approach is very sort of positive, optimistic, and he allows the creative discussions to flow, which was his role as a creative consultant, which he fit perfectly. But in terms of what he actually brought forward specifically, the film, and then him as the creative consultant, the film is kind of formed with his creative imagination. So when you sit and watch the film, you'll see the framing of the shots, the composition, and the kind of back in the days of the storyboard, and how the film kind of is presented to the aesthetics of the film really comes down to his brilliant work. We always describe the film as each scene being a magnificent painting. That's just what he was able to deliver. And anyone who sees that, and anyone who has seen it, as well as the trailer, they usually tell us the cinematography and then the shots. They're just so beautifully crafted. I think that's the heart of his contribution, as well as all creative areas, to be honest. But that's the thing that stands out the most.
So briefly, what were the other big challenges you faced in bringing The Lady of Heaven to the big screen?
Maybe Hussein wants to take that one.
Yeah, sure. There were various different challenges. I don't know where to start, to be honest. I think going back, we had everything from, like I said, inception to trying to find a producer, a creative consultant that understands our ideas, that can translate what we have in paper into a moving picture, can understand the cultural differences, the religious differences, the importance of the story, and to try and find everything. And we came across a great number of people. The vetting process was, to a degree, by and large, a very tiresome one, if you like. And Matthew and John Stevenson hit the nail on the head to a degree. It was a bumpy road, having said that, but nevertheless, as naturally one would expect it to be. But we got there at the end. I can recollect issues that we had in Georgia during filming, issues where we had with the VFX house here down in Bournemouth, and there were so many. But the great thing is working together with many of these great minds to deliver the final picture for us was something very, very special. And let's not forget, always going back to and having His Eminence Sheikh Al-Habib available for as and when to answer religious guidance questions, because you're always hit with barriers or new tasks, if you like, and you're not sure exactly where they sit. So all in all, a great collaboration between everyone, but it was a bumpy road and we got there.
And I will add as well that going into post-production, COVID hit, so the industry basically came to a standstill, and we're there, our films just come out of filming and we want to push through post-production. So that was a huge challenge, and a lot of corners had to be cut, but in the end we kind of just pushed through with Matthew's great producer work.
I was about to say, veterans like Matthew and John didn't know what to do then. These were people that we relied on at times of uncertainty, and they were scratching their heads at one point. But luckily, like the whole world did, we figured a way out.
You thought on your feet. So briefly, what would you like audiences to take away with them having seen your film?
I mean, for me, it's understanding who the lady was. And I mean, because for me personally, the lady is the greatest historical role model that one can have, truly. I mean, the film itself is a taster, hopefully an introduction to the lady. And the greatest thing for me is if people walked out the film wanting to go and find out more about the lady for themselves, because I don't exaggerate when I say that she is the greatest influence, after her father, Prophet Muhammad, in the world, and not just the Middle East, not just her region, but in the world. And people don't know this. People don't know her story. It's been sidelined. It's been sort of, Prophet Muhammad's ranked the most influential person in the world. You go online, you see I forgot the publication that publishes this every year, the 100 most influential people. Her father comes number one, but the lady should be there up with him, really, because after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was killed, and the era post his him being present, it was the lady that filled his shoes, along with her husband Imam Ali and her two sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. She led the way, and she continued on his stance. And anyone who's looked into that period of history after the Prophet Muhammad, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos in that region amongst the Muslims. It was really chaotic, because that seat of power kind of, with the Prophet not being there, just all sorts of things started to erupt. And the lady, she done what was needed, basically, and she sacrificed everything in order to continue on the message of the Prophet. And it's our view, and many historians view, that the Prophet Muhammad's message would not have continued on had it not been for the lady and her stand and her sacrifice. So I want people to go away from the film with the lady being a part of their life and wanting to go out themselves to find out more about her. That would make me so happy.
Fantastic. On that note, I'd like to thank Malik and Abdul Hussein for taking part in this Screen Network interview. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you, Stuart. It was